Welcome to the Lean Out Your Business podcast, a show dedicated to helping entrepreneurs accelerate business growth and simplify success. I'm your host, Krista Grasso, and I've been working with businesses for more than 2 decades to help them lean out and optimize what's working while eliminating anything that's not adding value. So if you are ready to get more time back in your day, more profit in your business, and to do business differently, growing and scaling on your terms, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Lean Out Your Business podcast. Today is something a little bit special, and I am joined by Jennifer Tamborski, and we are doing a double header where the first part of this podcast is right here on the Lean Out Your Business podcast, and the second part is over on her podcast, so you're going to have to tune in. So here's what we're going to be talking about today. We met recently and started chatting and immediately said, okay, we have to do a podcast on this because both of us are really, really passionate about debunking and demystifying a lot of the noise and terrible advice that's out there when it comes to marketing, growing, and scaling your business. And so that's what we want to dive into today and really help get clear on what does it actually take to take your business to $1 million to 7 figures. What are some of the really kind of shady things that people do that are very misleading? And what's some of the just straight up bad advice that's not very practical and that's actually going to keep you stuck instead of keep you scaling? So that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. But first, let me tell you a little bit about Jennifer, and then we are going to dive into all of the juicy stuff here. So Jennifer helps businesses demystify the digital marketing world through innovative marketing, impactful branding, and strategies that hit the mark. She is the founder of Virtual Marketing Experts, and she is the host of the Marketing Matchmaker Podcast, where you will find the second part of this interview. So Jennifer, welcome. I'm excited for our chat.
I am so super excited to be here, Christy. I think this is going to be so much fun and insightful for everybody.
I agree. And so, first things first, let's just start with some of the basics, right? If we're trying to grow our business, if we're trying to scale from a marketing perspective, what are kind of the core, most important things that we should be focused on? And then we'll go ahead and demystify a whole bunch of those.
Yeah. So it's really simple. One of the things that I hate about the marketing industry in general is that they make these things really complex. And while your strategy definitely needs to be dialed into who you are, what you do, and who you serve, there are only 3 areas of marketing that are important: visibility, lead generation, and sales. That's pretty much it. It doesn't have to be incredibly complex. It's just getting really good at those 3 things.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, at the end of the day, you need people to know that you exist. You need a way to bring those people through a funnel. I know not everybody likes the funnel word, cool, whatever. You need a way for them to go from hearing about you to buying something from you. And you need something to sell and something that's sellable, right?
Yeah.
Makes a lot of
Absolutely.
sense.
Yeah. And I think I also, that whole funnel word that people don't like, one of the things that I like to point out is everybody has a funnel. And I don't care if you're Walmart, they still have a funnel. Their top of their funnel are the ads you see, then their entire store is laid out in a way that will funnel you through it so that you have the most interaction to their product, services, or solutions.
It's true. It's everyone does have a funnel. I know you might not like the F word. However, they do exist. Call it whatever the heck you want. You have one. It's
Exactly.
kind of what it is. But it does, like, I feel like that's actually a really good example of something that gets really overhyped and
Mhm.
gets talked about so often that people actually sometimes can miss out on the magic and the beauty of having a funnel because they associate it with a lot of the big gurus out there that have the
Right.
87-step funnel with the tripwires and the upsell and the this in the thing that we don't want to do. And so people say, nope, I'm not having a funnel because that's what they've associated with funnels. But that's not actually what a
Absolutely.
funnel is. That's just the way certain people do funnels that I am a big believer in not doing.
I mean, I think they can work. It's every your funnel has to be designed in a way that works for you and your clients. And the funnels that people associate those big named people with work for their clients and how they
Mhm.
do it. Marketing is really personal. It's personal to you. And that's one of the things that I always talk to my clients about. If this isn't something that you are comfortable doing and that you can't commit to doing it consistently, it's never going to work because consistency is the real key to marketing and business in general, right? Being consistent about how you're communicating with your audience, how you're bringing them in, when you're doing it. I see a lot of business owners that market when they have no clients, get clients, and stop marketing. Problem is nobody stays with you forever. As much as we would love to. I love long-term clients. I've had clients around for 5, 6 years. I can't get them to go away. Not that I would want to, but like that's the relationship we have. And there's still a time that they're gonna leave. If you don't have that leads, those lead generations in your system, in your pipeline to fill that, those sales drop off and then you're on that roller coaster of business.
Yeah, it happens a lot. I know a lot of clients that come into me, I'll hear the story a lot. Things were great and everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, I had a couple of clients leave, and now I need to go out and start marketing. And that's the worst place to be because, as much as we wish we could tell people about us, they could find out about us and they buy tomorrow and they're immediately lifelong clients. It takes time. And today it takes even longer, I find, than it had previously.
Yeah.
And so we wanna be marketing and we wanna be raising visibility, generating leads when we don't need them so that they are ready to buy when we do.
Exactly, exactly. And I think it's just like setting up systems and operations in your business. If you set them up before you need them, your business continues to run smoothly instead of trying to cobble together something to get it to that next level. Marketing is the same way. If you are consistently marketing your business, you are going to be able to sell when you want and need to sell, as opposed to feeling this desperation because nobody wants to buy from someone who's desperate, right? And that's the thing. If we get to the point in our marketing where we feel desperate because we don't have enough sales coming in, it comes through in how we're marketing and what we're saying and the connections we're making in our energy. And that leads to less sales, not more.
Yeah, it's sad but true. And I recently recorded an episode just a few back on hitting a growth plateau. And the way to avoid the growth plateaus or the way to break through the growth plateaus is everything that we're talking about here. It's making sure that you're being proactive and consistent with your marketing. And it's making sure that you're being proactive with your systems, with your strategy, planning, systems, team, and insight, SPSTI, which you hear me talk about all the time. You need to be making sure that you not only have those things in place, but you're constantly elevating them and evolving them ahead of where you want to go next. Because if you aren't, you can't go where you want to go next. And I think that takes me to one of the big kind of myths that I want to dive into with you. And it's so often people think that what they really need is just more leads. And yes, when you want to grow your business, you do. You need more clients over time, but it's not just the lead that you need. If you don't have the operations in place, the SPSTI in place to support it, you can't actually sustain or even handle sometimes the growth that you're trying so hard to achieve in the business. So I'd love to hear some of your experience and perspective on that.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. And I actually have that conversation with clients because they're like, I want to hit $1 million or, whatever that financial goal is. Well, I remember talking to one client once and they're like, we want to run ads. I was like, okay, great. Let's pause here for a second. If you got 100 leads tomorrow from these ads, do you have the operations and business to support them? Now, they happen to be an attorney's office. And the answer was no. I'm like, okay. So while we can run ads, we need to do it in a very strategic and manageable way so that you can slowly grow in that vein rather than turning on a faucet and being drowned like a fire hose. And that can happen. So it's really about having realistic expectations of what it is that you can sustain, because there's a lot of, like, we've talked about the business plateaus, in a conversation before this, that if we're taking you from 0 or even $100,000 to $250,000, you have to have the systems to support that. But if you're going for 250 to a half a million, that's a whole other jump. And then half a million to a million. Like, all of these are jumps in your business. Can we do it? Sure, it's possible. Is it possible to do in a year? It's possible. Will your business break if you do it that way? Abso-freaking-lutely.
Mhm. And if you do it that way, which I've done this before, I have. I share the story quite often about my jewelry business that had been a handmade jewelry business. I taken it to six figures. I kind of hit the cap of what I was able to do because I was at a point where the only way to grow it was to put more time into it, and I was out of time to put into it. It
Right.
was completely dependent on me. I hit the ceiling of what was possible, and I knew that I wanted to scale it, and I wanted a seven-figure business. I didn't want a six-figure business. So I completely transformed my business model. I started working with local manufacturers. I turned it into something that could scale, and it was great. I did start to scale it, and I was not ready. I was not ready at all. I went from selling a few thousand pieces of jewelry a month to a few thousand pieces of jewelry a day, and
Mm,
all of the inventory management, all of the logistics of packing and shipping and customer inquiries and everything that came along with that. It sounds really glamorous. We all hear like explosive growth and exponential growth and quantum growth and put your adjective in front of the word growth, right? And we hear these things all the time, but what we don't always realize or stop to think of is what's the downside to that and can you actually support it?
yeah.
And I will tell you, that was not a great time in my personal health or relationships because the only thing I did was work around the clock. I ended up with an
Yeah.
ulcer. I ended up burnt out. My husband and I almost ended up divorced. Like,
Yeah.
it was not a great time. And when you get to that point, you don't make the best decisions because you're too darn exhausted. You're not thinking strategically. You're just trying to go from one fire to the next and one
Yeah.
thing to the next. And you actually end up putting yourself in a really not so great place. And the way I got through that, the way I actually ended up saving my business and inadvertently creating the lean out method in the process was by putting the systems in place, by putting the right team and the right people around me and elevating them to be an actual high performing team that were not completely dependent on me. Right. And so it was the SPSTI that I ended up developing just as a way to save my own sanity and business, not with the intention of it turning into what it's turned into today. But so often I think people hear like you can make seven figures by the end of the year. And there's this focus on doing it, and it makes it sound like it's easy and like it's doable. And it's not that it's not impossible, but A, it's not easy. And B, there is like a whole storm of chaos
Yeah.
coming behind it if you are not prepared for that level of growth.
That's actually, because my story, I ran a digital marketing agency for almost a decade. And I did that explosive growth during COVID 2020, 2021. Like, we went from barely making six figures to multiple six figures in a very short period of time. And I didn't have the systems in place. What it ended up for me, and I think for a lot of people that are solo-ish preneurs that are looking to grow, that have very small teams, it ended up burning me out because I was working 60-hour weeks, and same thing. Like, my personal life was not healthy at the time. My health wasn't doing great. I ended up pivoting my business because of it. I made a strategic choice, but it really cost me a lot in my own health and mental health and well-being, as well as firing everybody. Like, I went through and I was like, I can't do this. There came a point where I was like, I cannot continue to do this. I get to choose me or this business. I can't keep this going. And I made that choice and I stepped away and I closed it down. So I think that's one of the things that I always want to point out to my clients as we're working together. Could we have explosive growth? Yes. Are you ready to handle the explosive growth. Because if you don't have all of those things set up, if you don't have a business set up in a way that is scalable, the way I had my business set up, it was not scalable because it revolved around me. That's not a scalable method. If you're a coach or a consultant like the two of us going into one to one to one to many, that's a scalable model. But for a lot of business owners, they don't know how to do that. And if they don't have those offers already on the table, you may not be ready for the type of explosive growth that you keep hearing about.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think of is, right, ultimately at the end of the day, don't get me wrong, quick, cash infusions, quick wins, all those things are great in
Absolutely.
business. Like
Yeah.
we all want that, like bring it on. But I think we need to stop thinking just about the short term and we need to be thinking about the long-term sustainability of the
Yes.
business as well. Because if you're only focused on the short term, you always have to be focused on the short term. And you constantly put yourself on the revenue roller coaster and the hustle hamster wheel at the same time. Like it just happens. You want to be doing these things that are going to give you the long term viability and sustainability of your business. And if you can't sustain your level of growth, what is that going to do to your business long term? You might have this short term growth, which is great, but your client experience is going to suffer. People aren't going to retain with you. People, you may end up getting a whole bunch of refund requests, people who aren't happy, negative reviews, right? There's all of these side effects of growing too quickly and not being able to deliver the experience and the results that are at the like level of quality that you want to put out into the world. And that doesn't feel very good. That does not feel very good at
At
all
all.
when that ends up happening. Um, it doesn't end up helping you really. And so I see this like rush to hit these numbers that aren't even real numbers. It's like must hit seven figures to say that I did, as opposed to really looking at what do I really need to be generating in my business so that I can reinvest back into it, so that I can continue to grow it, so that I can, it's like I feel like we want to make really intentional and strategic decisions and we want to build the ecosystem around us to be able to support the level of growth that we want next.
Mhm.
But we have to be thinking about not just the now, we have to think about the long term sustainability of things and the overall impact that's going to have, I think, on our business as well.
I agree wholeheartedly. I think the other thing that I think people misunderstand when it comes to business and marketing is there's a big difference between cash flow and profit.
Mhm.
And a lot of people look at the cash flow being $1 million and they're like, I'm successful, but their profit, what they're taking home is like 30 grand. Is that really successful for you? Is that really what you want in your business? I've got a client now that we've been through that. She hit $1 million in revenue and it wasn't profit, right? 90% of her income went right back into paying her contractors, paying for her ads, paying for so when I came in and kind of did a whole overhaul of her marketing in general, I was like, you don't have a positive ROI on your marketing because of all of these other things. It's time to really look at those numbers. And I think that's one of the things that scares people the most.
I agree. And I've had that too. I'll talk to someone and be like, yeah, the business is great. It's really profitable. It's this. And I'm like, great. And how much are you paying yourself? They're like, oh, I don't really pay myself. I just every now and then I'll do an owner's draw if I need to. And I'm like, okay, well, let's just look for a moment at how much you would have to pay someone to replace yourself. Like, let's just start there, not go to for like what you would like to make. Let's just go like kind of like an average number of what you might need. And all of a sudden, they realize they're not making any profit whatsoever in the business. And I was like, you do need to actually pay yourself. Like, you need to be taking that into
That
consideration.
should be step one. That should be so I actually, with all of my clients, whether I'm working as a consultant for those micro businesses or a fractional CMO for those businesses that are already closer to seven figures, that's step one when we look at their marketing. What can they invest? And if they're not paying themselves, they really don't have the financial wherewithal to invest in their marketing, which means they have a really expensive hobby, not necessarily a business.
Which is scary, right? And if
Yeah.
if someone if any of you are listening and you're like, "Uh-oh." just know that we have all been there. I have been there
Yes,
many times over. It took me, a couple businesses to fully really get this down past
absolutely.
30 years. Um, but what are some of your strategies and some of your things for that person that's like, I don't have a big budget to invest in marketing
Mhm.
right now, but I need to expand my visibility. I need to generate more leads and I need to be having more sales close in the business. Like any tips that you're seeing that are working
Yeah.
especially well now?
So if you don't have you have with marketing, you have time or money. Those are the two things you can invest. So if you don't have the financial wherewithal, it's time to invest time. And so when we're talking about things like visibility, it's getting in front of a camera. I know nobody likes this idea, or very few people. There are some out there that love to be in front of the camera, but a lot of business owners, it's scary. The reality is you are the face of your business, and it's time to get in front of a camera, create some reels based on the topics that you know your audience is interested in. And if you don't know what your audience is interested in, then we take a step back, even further back, and really dive into knowing your audience, because that's step one. I often find those micro businesses that come to me, they kind of know their audience, but they haven't really dialed in enough. And you want to spend a lot of time there. There are a lot of tactics you can use, but it is really about the knowing your audience better than anybody else, knowing the topics that they need and want to hear about, knowing how they need what they need to know, do, or feel before they're ready to work with you is also essential, because it's not just about inviting everybody into your world. It's about inviting the right people into your world. So those are things. Short form content is still the king, queen, and princess of online space. Email marketing is still the essential piece to your business, because while social media is a great way to touch them, you need to pull them into your world. We've all seen Facebook go down at least twice where you haven't had access to them. I've had clients in the middle of launches when that has happened. They had an email list, so they were able to pivot because they were doing everything on social media at the time. Um, so things like that will really help you to create a structural foundation. And I look at networking as part of your marketing. Get your butt out there, find some people that have access to your audience and get on their podcast or get on their email list, or ask them if they'd be willing to share your whatever, your download or your webinar or whatever it is that you're looking to do to bring people into your world.
Absolutely. That's how you and I met.
Absolutely. Yep.
Good old
Networking
network.
is the best.
Now, how about that person who has a pretty healthy marketing budget, right? They're in a place where they are actively growing their business. They're ready for and excited for the next level of growth in their business. Where do you recommend that they focus from a marketing perspective?
So you're going to obviously you're focusing primarily on your leads. The majority of your budget is focused on your lead generation. So if you're looking at running ads, which I do love to use, and I don't care. Facebook is still the best targeted ads. They still have the largest amount of consumers on them. However, there are LinkedIn ads and YouTube ads and Twitter and all of the platforms. Like every platform has ads. Um, it's an easy way to reach a wider audience. Uh, and you have to have a funnel of some kind set up in order to bring them in, even if it's a direct to a sales call funnel. It's you've got to have something for them to do. So if we're talking about running ads, you're looking at your budget. If you have 100%, about 5% is spent in your visibility ads. About 90% is spent on your lead gen ads, and the other 5% is spent on retargeting to bring those people who aren't ready to buy back into your world in some way. So you really want to break it down and really look at how you're using ads in a way that's going to continue to do those three things: visibility, leads, sales. That's all that matters.
Absolutely. And I think one of the final things we'll wrap on here before we move on to part two, which we'll have to tune into, is I know in part two, we're going to talk a bit about the myth of easy and how
Ah,
everyone tries to claim that things are easy. But I do just want to circle back to those three things because I don't think anything in business is easy. I honestly don't trust anybody who talks about things being easy. I feel like they're trying to sell you something. But that being said, things can be simple. And
right.
simple is very different than easy. Simple is actually harder than complex, but there is beauty in simplicity. There is sustainability in simplicity. And
Absolutely.
the key with simplicity working is the right strategy. And I think if you look at those three things, those are the three things that you want to be focused on. The key next is how do you choose the right most aligned strategies based on where you currently are and based on where you want to go next for your business.
Yeah, I agree 100,000,000,000%. Your strategy is the thing that's going to set you apart from everybody else. And growing your business, increasing your revenue, scaling your impact doesn't have to be hard. Business doesn't have to be hard. It's also going to take work. There's a difference. Like you make it as hard as you want it to be. Um, but simplicity, I think, is the essential piece, is just breaking it down into what you need, focusing on those things, whether it's your operations or your marketing, focusing on making it something that's repeatable and scalable.
Absolutely. And with that, we're going to keep this conversation going over on Jennifer's podcast. So make sure that you head over there to hear more and keep diving into us kind of debunking what it really takes to get to 1 million with more of the kind of real strategies and not all the hyped nonsense that is out there. But before we go, Jennifer, can you tell people where they can find you if they want to connect with you and learn more about what you do?
Yeah. So if you want to listen to the podcast, it's Marketing Matchmaker. It is on every platform, including YouTube. So you can head over there. If you want to reach out, head to virtualmarketingexpert.com. And you can reach me there at any time. I'm also all over social media.
Shocker.
I know, right?
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being here. I loved this first part of our discussion, and I hope that you will tune in and join us for part two. We'll see you again next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode. If you have not yet taken our scalability assessment, I invite you to head to leanoutmethod.com/assessment and take our interactive assessment that's going to help you look at how simple, how sustainable, and how scalable your business currently is. It includes personalized recommendations of where to focus next to get your time back, to increase your impact, increase your profits, and ultimately step into your rich, fulfilled life. And finally, we'd love to see you inside our signature program, Simplify to Scale. You can head to leanoutmethod.com/ops to find all of the details on how we can help you uplevel your operations and get out of the day-to-day of your business.